I need the money tomorrow, my daughter ordered, handing me her husband's $500,000 debt. And don't be late, he added. I just smiled. Okay. 4 hours later, I was at the airport. When they arrived to collect the money, they found the door locked and a box. They opened it and screamed. Betrayal, revenge, justice. It begins. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and write in the comments what time it is where you are now. The doorbell rang 3 times in rapid succession, each chime more insistent than the last. I set down my bourbon and quarterly reports, already knowing who stood on my porch. Through the study window, I spotted their white Tesla Model S gleaming under the security lights. Emily only rang like that when she needed money. I walked through the marble foyer, past family photos that suddenly felt like artifacts from someone else's life. Emily at 5, missing her front teeth. Emily at 18, high school graduation. Emily at 28, her wedding day. Each image now seemed to mock my naivety. She stood there with that forced smile, the one that never quite reached her eyes anymore. Brandon loomed behind her, scrolling through his phone with the intensity of a man checking stocks or scores. Neither looked particularly happy to be here. Daddy! Emily threw her arms around me, holding on a beat too long. The embrace felt calculated, like she was depositing emotional currency for later withdrawal. Brandon brushed past without greeting, his designer shoes clicking against marble as he headed straight for my leather chair. My chair. I followed them into the living room, noting how Emily nervously adjusted the straps of her designer bag, the $5,000 one I'd bought her last Christmas. Brandon had already spread documents across my coffee table like he was conducting a board meeting. Emily perched on the couch edge, her fingers finding the pearl necklace I'd given her for her 30th birthday. She always touched it when she was about to ask for something. Can I get you anything? Water? Wine? I offered, though hospitality was the last thing I felt. Let's cut to the chase, Rob. Brandon didn't look up from arranging his papers. We have a situation. Rob, not Robert, not even the courtesy of Mr. Mitchell anymore. I gripped my bourbon glass tighter and counted backward from 10, an old anger management technique that rarely worked anymore. Emily's voice pitched higher, another tell. Daddy, you know we wouldn't come to you unless it was absolutely necessary. You've always said family comes first, and we're family. What happened to the investment property in Round Rock? I kept my tone neutral, though my jaw had started its familiar clench. Brandon finally looked up, his expression suggesting I'd asked about ancient history. Market corrections, temporary setback. But that's not why we're here. Emily's wedding ring spun around her finger, her grandmother's ring, actually. My mother's. The spinning was her tell when lying, had been since she was 12, and denied breaking Margaret's china. The thing is, Emily started, then stopped, then started again. Brandon's been working so hard on this new venture. Tech startup, very promising, revolutionary, really. How much? I interrupted. The grandfather clock in the corner ticked through 3 long seconds of silence. Brandon's cologne, something expensive and excessive, mixed with the oak and vanilla notes of my bourbon. Emily's heel clicked against the marble floor in a nervous rhythm. It's really not that much for someone of your assets, Brandon said, leaning back in my chair. The leather creaked under his weight, a sound that had always been mine alone until tonight. 500,000. We need it in our account by noon tomorrow. The room tilted slightly. My migraine, the one that always started behind my left eye during times of stress, began its familiar throb. 500,000. Not 50,000. Not even 100,000. $500,000, delivered as casually as ordering takeout. That's, I started, then stopped. Memories flooded in, unbidden. Teaching Emily to ride her bike in Zilker Park, her college graduation at UT, walking her down the aisle at the Four Seasons. Had that girl ever existed, or had I imagined her? Daddy, we wouldn't ask if we had any other option. Emily's fingers moved from her pearls to dab at her eyes, though I noticed no actual tears. The mortgage, the kids' schools, you know how expensive everything's gotten. I did know. I paid for those schools directly. $15,000 per child per semester at St. Andrews. The mortgage on their Westlake home, which I'd covered the down payment for. $200,000 that had been a one-time help 3 years ago. Brandon stood, walked to my bar without invitation, and poured himself 3 fingers of my 25-year-old Macallan. These aren't bank people we're dealing with, Rob. They're serious individuals. Would hate for this to affect your reputation at the country club or the dealerships. The threat hung in the air like Brandon's cologne, obvious, overwhelming, and nauseating. My blood pressure spiked. The migraine exploded from behind my eye across my skull. The room spun slightly, and I gripped the mantel for support. "Daddy, you look pale," Emily said. Not with concern, but calculation, like she was measuring my weakness for maximum leverage. That's when she said the words that changed everything. "If Mom were still alive, she'd be ashamed of how you're treating us." The words hung between us like a blade. Emily knew exactly what she was doing. Margaret and I had divorced 10 years ago, but Emily still weaponized her memory whenever convenient. Never mind that Margaret lived happily in Houston with her new husband. Never mind that she'd warned me about Emily's manipulation. In Emily's version of history, Margaret was a saint who would have opened her checkbook without question. "Your mother," I said slowly, "would have told you to get jobs." Brandon barked a laugh from my bar, still holding my scotch like he'd earned it. "Jobs? I'm an entrepreneur, Rob. I create jobs." 3 failed startups in 5 years. A cryptocurrency disaster that I'd warned him about last Christmas. The consulting firm that never consulted anyone. I'd funded them all, every single one, watching money disappear into Brandon's delusions of grandeur. "You missed Sophie's recital last month," Emily switched tactics, her voice trembling with manufactured hurt. "And Max's soccer tournament. But you have time for your quarterly reports?" Those quarterly reports kept their children in private school, kept their Tesla charged, kept their Westlake address respectable. But I didn't say that. Instead, I watched Emily's mascara run in 2 perfect streams. She'd clearly practiced this performance. "Let me understand this." I released the mantle, standing straighter despite the migraine. "You need $500,000 by noon tomorrow. For what exactly?" Brandon and Emily exchanged a glance, the kind married couple's perfect over years of coordinated deception. Brandon set down my scotch and returned to the coffee table, shuffling through papers with the unconscious rhythm of someone used to handling cards or chips. "Real estate opportunity," he said. "Time sensitive. Can't miss this window." "You just said you lost money on real estate in Round Rock." That was different. Brandon's knuckles whitened as he gripped one of the documents. "This is cryptocurrency. I mean, this is a sure thing." The slip was small, but significant. Crypto, not real estate. The same mistake that cost them $200,000 8 months ago. My left hand started trembling, a new development in my 60s. I shoved it in my pocket. Emily's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, typed quickly, then placed it face down. "Daddy, we've supported you through so much. When you and Mom divorced, who stood by you? When the economy tanked in 2020, who helped keep the dealerships running?" "You were in Cabo that entire summer," I reminded her. "Posted about it daily on Instagram." "That's not fair. The wedding." I started listing, my voice steady despite the rage building. 100,000. The house down payment, 200,000. Brandon's first startup, 150,000. The second, 80,000. The third. "That's ancient history," Brandon interrupted, standing now, trying to use his height advantage. "We're talking about our future. Your grandchildren's future." "The grandchildren whose tuition I paid directly to St. Andrews." Emily stood too, clutching her phone. The staged photo from her childhood, the one of us at SeaWorld when she was 7, suddenly appeared on the coffee table. She'd brought it as a prop. "These aren't just debts, Rob." Brandon stepped closer, close enough that I could see the small scar above his left eyebrow. "These are obligations. Serious people with serious consequences. By tomorrow noon, or things get complicated for everyone. Your reputation, the dealerships, that nice country club membership. Are you threatening me in my own house?" My voice dropped to barely above a whisper. "We're being honest about reality," Emily said, but her voice wavered. She'd never seen me this angry, this controlled. "Daddy, please, we need this. Tomorrow, noon. That's not negotiable." The room felt suffocating despite the central air running. My migraine pounded with each heartbeat. Brandon's cologne seemed to thicken the air. Emily's calculated tears had smeared her eye makeup into something almost theatrical. I looked at them both, my daughter who'd become a stranger, her husband who'd never pretended to be anything but a parasite. The grandfather clock chimed 9 times. Outside, suburban Austin continued its quiet evening routines, oblivious to the family destruction happening in my living room. Fine! The word came out flat, exhausted. Tomorrow. Now leave. Emily mistook my exhaustion for capitulation. She rushed forward, arms outstretched for another embrace. I stepped back, letting her arms fall empty. Brandon extended his hand for a shake, gripping too hard, establishing dominance he'd never earned. "We knew you'd understand," Emily said, gathering her designer bag and her staged photo. "Family first, right, Daddy?" They walked out without another word, Brandon's hand possessively on Emily's lower back, guiding her like a casino chip he'd just won. I stood in the doorway, watching their Tesla's distinctive whine fade down the street. The taillights disappeared around the corner onto Westlake Drive. I waited exactly 5 minutes after their taillights disappeared before I made the first call. James Walker answered on the second ring, despite the late hour. 25 years of friendship and legal counsel meant he knew my patterns. I never called after 9 unless something was seriously wrong. They finally crossed the line, didn't they? His voice carried no surprise, only resignation. "Noon tomorrow," they said. Like I'm an ATM with a withdrawal limit they've finally exceeded. "The house transfer paperwork is already filed," James said. I heard papers shuffling on his end. "They just don't know it yet. Emily's name was never on that deed, remember? You insisted on keeping it in your name when you paid their down payment." "What about Margaret?" I asked, walking back through my house, seeing it differently now, not as a home, but as a stage for tonight's final performance. "She's expecting your call. Says it's about time you stopped enabling them." I hung up and immediately went to my home office. The migraine had shifted from explosive pain to cold clarity. My laptop opened to an email confirmation from 3 weeks ago. Villa Las Palmas, Costa Rica, March 17th through April 17th. Your reservation is confirmed. The retirement planning trip would now serve a different purpose. I called American Airlines, navigating the automated system with practiced efficiency. The morning flight could be moved to 6:45 a.m. First class still available. 1 passenger. My home safe opened with a combination I'd never shared, not even with Emily. Inside, organized in labeled folders, lay 20 years of financial documentation. Every check, every wire transfer, every loan. Brandon's signed agreement from December 2023, promising this would be the last request. Emily's Instagram posts from the past year, printed and dated, showing their lavish lifestyle while claiming poverty. Shopping sprees at the Domain, dinner at Uchi, weekend trips to Napa. I found an old Amazon box in the garage, ordinary and unremarkable. Inside, I arranged 3 document sets with a lawyer's precision. First, the deed to their house. Second, the complete loan history. $847,000 over 8 years, meticulously documented. Third, the legal notices James had prepared months ago, hoping we'd never need them. At the bottom, I placed a USB drive containing tonight's security footage. The cameras I'd installed after a break-in 2 years ago had captured everything. Emily's rehearsed tears, Brandon's threats, their coordinated manipulation. On top, I placed a single note. "You wanted it tomorrow. Here's what you're really getting." The packing took 30 minutes. 2 suitcases, efficiently filled with tropical weight clothing, essential documents, medications. My dealership manager, Jake, received a brief email. "Family emergency. You're in charge. Details to follow." I stood in the hallway, looking at the family portrait we'd taken 5 years ago at Laguna Gloria. Emily's smile looked genuine then, or maybe I just wanted to believe it was. I lifted the heavy frame off the wall, turned it backward, and rehung it. The blank canvas back seemed more honest somehow. In my bedroom, I removed my University of Texas class ring, the one Emily used to play with as a child, pretending she'd wear it someday. It went into the box with everything else. The migraine had completely faded now, replaced by something closer to anticipation. My phone showed 3 text messages from Emily. I deleted them without reading. Brandon had called twice, probably to reinforce tomorrow's deadline. The voicemails could wait forever. I made one more call, this time to Margaret in Houston. She answered immediately, as if she'd been waiting by the phone. Robert? James called me. Are you really doing this? Should have done it years ago. She's our daughter. Margaret's voice carried sadness, not judgment. But she's not the daughter we raised anymore, is she? No, she's not. The Costa Rica place? You'll be safe there? It's a vacation, a long one. Jake can handle the dealerships. The lawyers can handle everything else. Margaret was quiet for a moment. You know she'll try to find you. Let her try. By the time she figures out what's really in that box, I'll be drinking coffee on the beach, deciding whether to ever come back. We said goodbye without sentimentality. Margaret understood what Emily had become, maybe before I did. Mothers always know. At 11:30 p.m., I stood in my dark kitchen, drinking water and studying the refrigerator covered in my grandchildren's artwork. Stick figures labeled Grandpa and Me Fishing at Lake Travis, a crayon drawing of my dealership with Grandpa's work scrawled beneath. I carefully removed the fishing picture, folded it, and placed it in my wallet. The children weren't responsible for their parents' choices. I set the box on the porch table where they'd be sure to see it. The doorbell camera would capture their reaction when they opened it at noon, expecting a check and finding instead the complete dismantling of their illusions. The alarm was set for 4:30 a.m., 6 hours until my new life began, 6.5 until theirs fell apart. The alarm cut through darkness at exactly 4:30 a.m. No snooze button, no hesitation. I'd trained myself over 32 years of early dealership meetings to wake instantly, and today that discipline served a different purpose. The coffee maker gurgled to life, already programmed the night before. Colombian dark roast, the kind Emily always complained was too strong when she still visited for breakfast. The ceramic mug warmed my hands, an anniversary gift from her 10 years ago when she still remembered such dates. Through the kitchen window, Austin's skyline began its slow awakening, office buildings lighting up floor by floor while most of the city still slept. I moved through my house with deliberate precision, documenting each room like a detective at a crime scene. The master bedroom still held Margaret's mother's portrait. Emily had always wanted it, never asked nicely enough to receive it. Her childhood room, long since converted to an office, still displayed her high school trophies. State debate champion, National Honor Society, the daughter I'd raised versus the stranger who demanded money 12 hours ago. The pool area looked serene in the pre-dawn light. I'd taught Emily to swim there, her fearless splashing at age 4. Last July, Brandon had gotten drunk at our 4th celebration, fell in fully clothed, then blamed me for the pool's placement. Even then, I'd written the check for his ruined designer watch. The Bentley purred to life in the garage. I chose it over the Tesla. Brandon had too many memories in that car, too many assumptions about inheritance. The streets of Westlake Hills lay empty except for garbage trucks, beginning their Saturday routes. I drove past Emily's neighborhood, every house dark, peaceful. They were sleeping, probably dreaming of ways to spend my money. The radio played classic rock, and the Eagles' Take It Easy filled the cabin. The irony wasn't lost on me. At the intersection of Bee Cave and Walsh Tarleton, I considered calling Margaret, but decided against it. James would handle that conversation better than I could. Mopac stretched ahead, nearly empty. I passed 3 of my dealerships, their lots full of inventory that would soon be Jake's responsibility. The flagship location still had my photo in the lobby. That would need changing. Near 5th Street, I noticed Brandon's favorite bar, the Velvet Room, where his gambling connections congregated, where this whole disaster had really started. Construction on Congress forced a detour through 2nd Street. The city I'd built my business in for 3 decades looked different in the pre-dawn darkness, like a stage being set for a play I'd no longer attend. James's office occupied the 42nd floor of the Frostbank Tower. At 5:30 a.m., the building stood mostly empty except for security and the obsessively ambitious. James waited in the conference room with Sophia Chen, his paralegal, documents spread across the mahogany table with military precision. A box of Krispy Kreme donuts sat in the center, our tradition for major deals since 1999. "You look surprisingly rested," James observed, sliding the power of attorney across the table. "First good night's sleep in months." I signed with my father's fountain pen, the one Emily didn't know existed. "Limited scope, I see. 60-day expiration, only property transfers and financial restructuring. Can't have you selling her organs after all. His attempted levity fell flat. We both knew this was necessary surgery, not revenge. Sophia presented the property documentation with clinical efficiency. The interesting part, Mr. Mitchell, is the timing. The transfer was actually executed yesterday at 4 p.m., before they came to my house. 3 hours before. Emily's house has been legally yours since she signed those papers in 2020. She never read past the second page. The irony was perfect. While Emily had been driving to my house to demand money, she'd already lost her biggest asset. The house she posted about constantly on Instagram, the symbol of her success, had never been hers at all. The financial lockdown? I asked. Executed at midnight. Joint accounts frozen. Credit cards in your name suspended. The children's tuition remains on autopay through December. We're not punishing them. James produced another folder, thicker than the rest. The nuclear option, as we discussed. Inside lay transcripts of Emily's text messages to friends, calling me a walking ATM and too pathetic to say no. Brandon's signed promissory note from 2023, swearing this was the last time. The USB drive containing last night's security footage, their entire performance captured in high definition. The prenup Brandon signed, James continued, includes a gambling addiction clause, page 47, subsection 3. He doesn't know? His lawyer was too drunk to read that far. Showed up to the signing smelling like bourbon at 2 in the afternoon. Sophia looked uncomfortable. Mr. Mitchell, this is remarkably thorough. 5 years of preparation, I replied. I kept hoping I'd never need it. James produced an identical Amazon box to the one on my porch. Insurance? If she doesn't find yours, this goes to her office Monday, along with these. He revealed photos, Brandon at the casino last week. The timestamp clear, the losses visible on his face. Margaret knows? I asked. She's known for months. Helped to document everything. She's as tired of enabling Emily as you are. The Costa Rica property, purchased through the Cayman entity, completely protected. Even if Emily gets ambitious with lawyers, she can't touch it. I signed the last document, my hand trembling slightly on Emily's trust fund termination. 20 years of planning for her future, dissolved with one signature. James noticed the tremor. Bourbon? He gestured to his desk drawer, another tradition. No, need a clear head for the flight. At 6 a.m. sharp, I stood and shook James's hand. His grip conveyed understanding, sympathy, and determination. The elevator descended alone, each floor marking distance from my old life. The valet already had my Bentley running. I handed him a $100 bill and an envelope. Jake Martinez will pick this up Monday. The young man nodded, confused but professional. I drove toward the airport as the sun broke the horizon, painting Austin's skyline gold. My phone buzzed, Emily calling earlier than expected. The last time I'd hear that ringtone without choosing to answer. Highway 71 stretched toward Austin Bergstrom International as the sunrise painted the hills copper and gold. The familiar route felt different this morning, each landmark a goodbye. Manuel's taco truck was setting up at the Riverside intersection where I usually stopped for breakfast tacos. Not today. NPR discussed a local businessman's expansion plans, my own dealership group, ironically, though they wouldn't be mine much longer. Emily called 3 times in rapid succession, then Brandon once. Each ringtone felt like a countdown. 10 years ago, that sound would have made me answer immediately, worried something had happened to the grandchildren. Now I recognized it for what it was, the sound of entitlement demanding its due. Mental inventory while merging onto 183. Jake had run the Saturday operations for 5 years. He'd managed fine. The property management company had their instructions and 6 months' payment in advance. The grandchildren's school tuition would continue through December. They shouldn't suffer for their parents' choices. Everything else had ceased to be my responsibility. At midnight, the airport's south terminal emerged from morning mist. The valet stand wasn't busy yet, just 2 attendants preparing for the day's rush. Tommy, who'd parked my cars for 3 years, looked surprised. "Early flight, Mr. Mitchell?" "Change of plans." I handed him the keys and an envelope. "Jake Martinez will pick this up Monday. His information's inside." "Everything all right, sir?" "Better than it's been in years." I didn't look back at the Bentley. That car had driven Emily to her wedding, Brandon to countless bars, me to endless ATM withdrawals. Let Jake decide what to do with it. The first-class counter stood empty except for Michelle, who'd checked me in for dozens of business trips. Costa Rica today, Mr. Mitchell? I have you on the 6:45 to San Jose? That's right. Normal conversation masking life-altering change. 2 bags to check? Everything I need. She tagged the suitcases with practiced efficiency. I kept my carry-on close. Documents, medications, laptop, the few photos I couldn't leave behind. As she handed back my passport, I pulled out a sealed envelope. I need a favor, Michelle. Someone will come looking for this later today. Emily Carter, she'll be agitated. Michelle's professionalism never wavered. Any special instructions? Just verify her ID. There's a key inside to a storage unit. She'll understand. Or she wouldn't. Either way, the storage unit held 20 years of her childhood belongings I'd saved. Things she'd never bothered to collect. Let her decide if memories were worth more than money. TSA pre-check moved with Saturday morning efficiency. The regular agents recognized me. Where to today, Mr. Mitchell? Somewhere warmer. Business or pleasure? Neither. Personal matter. Through the scanner, belt off, shoes in the bin. The mundane ritual of modern travel felt surreal against the backdrop of deliberate life demolition. I collected my belongings, each item returning to its designated pocket except my phone, which stayed off. Austin Java appeared at gate 14, and muscle memory guided me to the counter. The barista, Kelly according to her name tag, smiled with morning enthusiasm. The usual? Medium dark roast, no room? Make it a large today. Special occasion? You could say that. I sat at the gate, the coffee warming my hands like my mug at home had 2 hours ago. My phone showed its final statistics before I powered it completely off. 7 missed calls from Emily, 3 from Brandon, 12 text messages, 2 voicemails. Emily's last text caught my eye. Dad, call me back, having weird dreams about money. I typed a response. Dreams and reality are often different. Deleted it. Typed again. Check the porch. Deleted that too. Finally typed, ask James Walker. Then deleted that as well. Instead, I powered the phone off, removed the SIM card, and dropped both in the nearest trash bin. The investment phone could become someone else's problem. First-class passengers for Flight 447 to San Jose, Costa Rica, now boarding. The gate agent scanned my boarding pass with a practiced smile. The jet bridge stretched ahead, each step lighter than the last. The flight attendant welcomed me to seat 2A, window, left side. I accepted the offered champagne, unusual for 7 in the morning, perfect for this moment. Other passengers filed past. A honeymoon couple, giggling and touching constantly, reminded me of Margaret and myself 35 years ago. A business traveler typed frantically on his laptop, chasing some deadline that seemed monumentally important. That had been me once, building an empire for a daughter who'd only seen ATM codes. An elderly woman settled in 3C with knitting needles and yellow yarn, like Emily's grandmother used to do before the arthritis won. Excuse me? A familiar voice made me freeze. Margaret stood in the aisle, designer luggage in hand, looking exactly as composed as she had during our divorce proceedings. She settled into 2B. Across the aisle, close enough to talk, far enough to maintain boundaries we'd established a decade ago. James called, she said simply. Thought you might need backup. It's not your fight anymore. Hasn't been for 10 years, but she's still my daughter. Someone should be there when she lands. There? I bought the condo next door 6 months ago. James really is thorough. Found it, negotiated the price, handled everything. I've been planning this as long as you have. The captain's voice interrupted. Slight delay for our final passenger. My chest tightened. Emily? Had she figured it out early? Brandon? The door opened, but it was just a harried businessman, apologizing as he squeezed past to economy. Did you tell her? I asked Margaret. Tell her what? That her father finally stopped enabling her? That her husband's a parasite? That she became exactly what we swore she'd never be? No, Robert. She'll figure it out herself. Today, actually. The door closed with pneumatic finality. 7:05 a.m. Pushback. 7:15 a.m. Engines roaring to life. Acceleration pressing me back into leather that didn't smell like Brandon's cologne or Emily's perfume. Austin shrank below, the hills and lakes I'd called home for 30 years becoming abstract geometry. Somewhere down there, Emily's alarm was going off. In 4 hours, she'd arrive at my empty house. In 5 hours, she'd find the box. In 6 hours, my old life would be completely dismantled. The flight attendant appeared with breakfast menus. Business or pleasure? I considered the question. Neither. It's justice. Margaret laughed, the first genuine laugh I'd heard from her in years. That's the Robert I married. Welcome back. Below, Texas disappeared under clouds. At exactly noon, when Emily expected $500,000, I was having lunch above the Caribbean. Margaret reading beside me. Both of us finally free from the daughter we'd loved and lost years before the money ran out. I learned what happened next, the way I learned most things about Emily's life, secondhand, through cameras and witnesses. A father watching his daughter's life like a documentary he couldn't turn off. James sent me the security footage 3 days later. I watched it on my laptop from the Costa Rica balcony, Pacific waves providing an oddly peaceful soundtrack to my daughter's meltdown. The timestamp showed 12 p.m. exactly when the first text arrived. Your transaction has been completed. That was James, confirming the house transfer had been recorded. At that exact moment, I was ordering ceviche, and Emily was probably still sleeping off whatever Brandon had bought with my previous loan. According to her Saturday routine, James had documented this too, Emily left her house at 11:30 a.m. The Starbucks charge at 11:47 confirmed it. A $7 latte on the credit card I'd canceled at midnight. The decline wouldn't hit until Monday when the weekend authorizations processed. Her last purchase on my dime. Mrs. Chen, my neighbor of 15 years, provided the next chapter. She'd called James at 12:15 p.m., speaking in her precise English that 40 years in Texas hadn't softened. Mr. Walker, they are here. Emily and the gambling man. They don't know I'm watching. The security footage picked up at 12:15:23. Emily's white Mercedes pulled into my driveway with the confidence of someone about to collect their allowance. Brandon checked his phone. James later confirmed he was tracking basketball scores, probably planning his next bet with my money. Emily applied lipstick in the mirror, the same shade of red she'd worn to ask for her first car at 16. Her wedding down payment at 28. Yesterday's $500,000 demand at 35. They walked to my door like they owned it. Brandon carried an empty Hermes briefcase, $12,000 retail, bought with my loan from January. Empty, waiting for cash that would never come. Emily rang the doorbell at 12:16:45. Normal ring, not the demanding triple press from yesterday. She waited exactly 10 seconds. I knew her patterns. Then rang again, longer this time. Brandon cupped his hands against the side window, peering into my empty kitchen. His car's gone, Emily said, loud enough for Mrs. Chen to hear from her garden. So, he's got 5 cars. Brandon's dismissive tone carried across the yard. The lights are on timers. Emily noticed what I'd programmed weeks ago. Maybe he went to get cash from the bank. You said noon? It's barely past. They tried the door at 12:18. Emily's key scraped against the lock, unable to find purchase. James's paralegal had changed them at 7 a.m., 3 hours after I'd left for the airport. The confusion on Emily's face was almost worth the decades of manipulation. Brandon spotted the box at 12:20:33, just an Amazon package on the porch table, unremarkable except for Emily's name in black Sharpie across the top. She opened it casually, probably expecting a late birthday gift or apology present. The first document she pulled out was the deed to her house. Her face changed like time-lapse photography of fruit rotting, confusion to disbelief to horror in under 3 seconds. She dropped it, and Brandon snatched the paper before it hit the ground. What do you mean it's in his name? Brandon's voice carried to Mrs. Chen's yard. Emily pulled out the spreadsheet next. Every payment, every loan, every gift meticulously documented. Total, $1.3 million over 8 years, not including the house. Her hands shook as she reached the bottom line. The photographs came next. Brandon at the Palms Casino last Tuesday. The timestamp's clear, his losses written on his face. Then the promissory note he'd signed, swearing December's money was the last he'd ever request. Emily's text messages to her friends, printed and highlighted. Dad's too pathetic to say no, and he'll cave, he always does. And my personal favorite, I deserve this money more than he does. At 12:23:17, Emily's phone buzzed. The first credit card decline, then another, then another. Chase, American Express, the Nordstrom card, all suspended, all in my name, all canceled at midnight while she slept. Brandon tried calling someone at 12:24. His bookie, James discovered later, who informed him that credit extensions required collateral, not promises. Emily collapsed onto my porch steps, her designer dress crumpling against concrete I'd had resurfaced last summer. She found the USB drive at 12:25:44, plugged it into her phone with trembling fingers. Her own voice echoed from the speaker, tinny but clear. Just take whatever he gives you. He's too pathetic to say no. Then Brandon's voice. These aren't bank people, Rob. They're serious individuals. The prenup appeared last. Page 47 was highlighted in yellow. The gambling addiction clause circled in red. Immediate forfeiture of marital assets if gambling debts exceeded $50,000. Brandon had passed that threshold 3 years ago. Brandon threw his briefcase at my door at 12:27:31. The handle broke off, Herman's leather scattering across my porch. Emily's sobbing became audible on the recording, not the pretty tears from yesterday, but raw, ugly sounds of someone realizing they'd played themselves. Mrs. Chen emerged at 12:28, all 4 feet 11 inches of her, holding her phone like a weapon. I'm calling the police if you don't leave. This is my father's house, Emily screamed, mascara creating abstract art on her cheeks. Not anymore. Mr. Mitchell sent me the property transfer notice this morning. You're trespassing. Brandon stormed to the car at 12:30, leaving Emily to gather scattered papers. Her fortune now just litter on my porch. She left some behind. The wind would handle those. Brandon peeled out, leaving tire marks on my driveway that the property manager would bill to their account. At 12:30:45, exactly when Emily discovered her inheritance had evaporated, I was watching the ocean from a beachside restaurant. The waiter had just asked if I was celebrating something. A graduation? I told him. Your child? He'd asked in accented English. No? Mine. James called Monday with the epilogue. Emily returned Sunday morning with a locksmith who refused the job once he verified ownership. She tried climbing the fence until the security company responded. The police gave her a trespass warning. Brandon never came back. James heard he'd moved to his brother's house in Dallas, divorce papers already filed. 3 days later, sitting on my balcony with Margaret reading beside me, James asked if I wanted to see the complete footage. No, I said, watching pelicans dive for fish. The screaming I'd heard for 5 years was finally, blessedly, silent. James sent me the parking garage footage 3 days later. I watched it from my deck in Costa Rica, pelicans diving for fish in the background, while my daughter's life imploded on my laptop screen. The timestamp showed 7 p.m. March 16th, exactly when I was having my first peaceful dinner in years. Their Mercedes screeched into the underground parking of Emily's condo building. Even without audio, Brandon's body language screamed rage. He slammed the door so hard the car alarm triggered, its lights flashing like a distress signal nobody would answer. Emily chased him to the elevator, clutching those documents like evidence in a murder trial, which in a way they were, evidence of the murder of their delusions. The building's elevator audio, which James's paralegals somehow obtained, captured their conversation in devastating clarity. Emily's voice, shrill with betrayal, "You said it was commercial real estate." "It was." Brandon's denial came quick, desperate. The casino was just stress relief. Stress relief? Stress relief? The sound of papers hitting flesh, then the elevator's pleasant ding, doors closing on Emily's raw sobbing. By 7:30, Emily had started an Instagram Live that would become legendary among Austin's social circles. James's paralegal screenshotted everything before Emily deleted it. Minutes later, there she was, mascara creating abstract art on her cheeks, wine glass trembling in her manicured hand. When someone you trust betrays you. She held up the house deed to the camera, Brandon visible in the background, throwing clothes into a suitcase. When your whole life is built on lies. The wine glass flew across the room, shattering against their wedding photo. Stream ended. 47 people watched Emily Carter, social butterfly of Westlake, self-destruct in real time. 3 were employees from my dealerships who immediately forwarded the recording to James. Brandon's mother called my office Monday morning, her voicemail preserved in James's meticulous records. Mr. Mitchell, Brandon's been missing since Saturday night. Emily says you've kidnapped him. A pause, heavy with maternal desperation. I know that's crazy, but do you know where my son is? I didn't, but I knew where he'd been. Brandon had spent those hours calling everyone he'd ever met with money. Country club friends, college roommates, even his ex-girlfriend's father. Each conversation shorter than the last. Each rejection adding weight to his desperation. His mother heard him say, voice cracking, "It's not just money anymore. These people don't play." Between 8:30 and 10 p.m., Emily dove deep into Google's legal advice. Her search history, visible because she'd used my Amazon account to access the Wi-Fi, read like a map of denial. Can father take back Gift House, Texas? How to break power of attorney. Statute limitations, financial gifts, Texas. Emergency bankruptcy lawyer, Austin. Can casino debts affect spouse, Texas? Cheap divorce attorney, no money down. The last search hurt more than I expected. Not because she wanted to divorce Brandon, that was overdue, but because she immediately went looking for someone else to fund it. Rachel, Emily's best friend since college, called Margaret around 10 p.m. Emily had finally played the entire USB, not just yesterday's pathetic comment. 5 years of family gatherings, birthday parties, and holiday dinners, all secretly recorded. Emily's voice calling me a walking ATM at her 30th birthday. Brandon joking about bleeding the old man dry at Thanksgiving. Emily coaching Brandon on manipulation tactics before our anniversary dinner. The Christmas toast where they'd mockingly thanked good old dad, the family bank. She played it 3 times, Rachel told Margaret, like she couldn't believe it was real. The credit card cascade started at exactly 10:17 p.m., each declined notification pinging to James's monitoring system. Chase Sapphire declined. American Express Platinum suspended. Nordstrom invalid. Even her Starbucks card deactivated. A DoorDash driver filed a complaint the next day. Emily had ordered $200 of sushi, planning to pay cash. No cash in the house. The driver threatened small claims court while Brandon was already at a pawn shop with her jewelry. Emily's Facebook posts between 11 p.m. and midnight became Austin gossip legend. Each deleted within minutes, but screenshots spread like wildfire. Betrayed by blood. When your father chooses money over family. Anyone know employment lawyers? Selling designer bags. Serious inquiries only. The comments she hadn't expected poured in immediately. Her cousin, "Didn't you just post from Cabo last week?" High school friend, "Thought your dad bought you everything." Former coworker, "Aren't you the one who quit working after marriage?" While Emily's world crumbled, Margaret and I sat on the beach deck playing poker. A local guitarist strummed nearby, and I tipped him $100 to play "Take It Easy" by the Eagles. Margaret laughed. First genuine laugh I'd heard from her in years. "You're terrible at poker," she observed, taking my chips. "I'm free," I replied, and meant it. Mrs. Chen called James again at 11:45 p.m. Emily had returned to my house, just sitting in her Mercedes in the driveway. Not trying to enter, not raging, just sitting, staring at dark windows like they might suddenly illuminate with forgiveness. She sat there for an hour, Mrs. Chen reported. When she finally left at 1 a.m., she looked different, like she aged 10 years in 10 hours. By midnight on March 16th, Emily had lost access to $2.3 million in assets, discovered $500,000 in hidden family debt, realized Brandon had gambled away their savings, found out she'd never owned her house, and learned her mother had known everything for months. James asked if I felt guilty about the recordings. I told him the only thing I regretted was not starting them sooner. Sunday morning, March 17th, Emily stood at my office building's entrance for 2 hours. Security footage showed her pressing the intercom every few minutes, like a child repeatedly pushing an elevator button, hoping persistence would change reality. She called employees from the company directory she'd stolen years ago. Jake blocked her after the 3rd call. Others simply didn't answer. By noon, she'd moved to Austin Bergstrom International, the same terminal where I'd dropped her off for college visits, where I'd welcomed her home from her honeymoon. Now she was there as a detective, desperately seeking clues to my escape. TSA wouldn't provide passenger information. American Airlines required a warrant. When she claimed family emergency, they checked their system. Passengers specifically requested no contact, the agent informed her. James had video from airport security, Emily's face crumbling at those words. Her Uber receipts that afternoon, the last rides before the account cut off, traced a map of desperation across Austin. Robert's Golf Club, membership revoked, entry denied. Morton's Steakhouse, where we'd celebrated every major deal. Haven't seen Mr. Mitchell lately. Even my barber shop on South Congress, though it was closed Sundays. She stood outside, peering through windows like my hair clippings might reveal my location. Monday, March 18th became Emily's legal education day. 4 law firms, 4 identical consultations. Each lawyer's expression shifted from interest to sympathy as they reviewed the documents. "These are ironclad," said the first. "You'll need a $10,000 retainer," said the second. "Do you have access to funds?" asked the third. The fourth just shook his head. The dealership confrontation at 3 p.m. made it onto employee social media. Emily stormed into the flagship location on Research Boulevard, demanding answers from Jake. Jake Martinez, 6'4" former Marine, remained perfectly calm as she screamed about kidnapping, elder abuse, and theft. When she threw her coffee at the glass door, customers started recording. The brown stain would remain for 3 days. Jake left it there on principle. Brandon's mother's voicemail at 5 p.m. carried a mother's worst fears. "Mr. Mitchell, Brandon's been missing since Saturday night. Emily says you've kidnapped him. I know that's crazy, but do you know where my son is?" Tuesday, March 19th, the real creditors arrived. Not bank representatives in polyester suits, but 2 men in Italian leather who knocked politely and spoke softly. They left a business card with just a phone number. No threats, no violence, just the weight of unspoken consequences. Emily called Brandon 47 times. His phone had been off since Saturday. Her Instagram stories that afternoon, screenshot by her sorority sisters, documented the pawn shop tour. Designer bags worth $30,000, $8,000 cash. Jewelry worth $50,000, except the wedding ring, $15,000 cash. Brandon's 3 abandoned watches worth $40,000, $12,000 cash. Still $465,000 short of what they needed. That evening, Margaret took Emily's call. She recorded it with legal permission, knowing I'd need to hear it eventually. "Mom, did you know?" Emily's voice sounded younger, almost childlike. "About Brandon's gambling? 6 months ago? Why didn't you tell me? Would you have listened?" Silence. Then, "I need money." "So did I during the divorce. You said I should be independent." The call ended with Emily's sob, cut short by Margaret's disconnect. Wednesday, March 20th. Emily entered James's office wearing the same designer dress from her Cabo Instagram posts the week before. The irony wasn't lost on James, who noted it in his report. Same conference room where I'd signed the papers. Same chair where Brandon had spread his lies. James showed her everything with clinical precision. Power of attorney predating her emergency. The house deed trail, her signature from 2020, never reading past page 2, gift tax returns proving every dollar was a gift, not a loan. Brandon's promissory note, his signature bold and undeniable. "He's my father." Emily's desperation cracked her voice. "He has to help me." "Legally, he doesn't." "What about grandchildren support?" "Trust funds in their names only. Untouchable until 18. "This is elder abuse." "He's 62, sound mind. Left voluntarily." James accidentally left Brandon's credit report visible on his tablet. Emily's eyes widened as she absorbed the full catastrophe. $500,000 in gambling debts. $200,000 in personal loans she'd never known about. $100,000 in credit cards he'd hidden. Even an attempted second mortgage on her house, denied due to ownership issues. The final envelope slid across the mahogany table with whispered promise. Mr. Mitchell authorized one final gift. Inside, a $10,000 cashier's check and a note in my handwriting. "For a fresh start, Dad." Emily tore it in half. The pieces fluttered to the carpet like dead leaves. She immediately asked if there was another. There wasn't. There never would be. Meanwhile, I was learning Spanish from children on the beach. Roberto El Rico, they called me, laughing as I mangled pronunciation. My blood pressure had dropped 20 points. I slept 8 hours straight. Hadn't thought about Emily in 2 days until Margaret mentioned her. Wednesday night, James reported. Emily left my office at noon. Security footage shows her sitting in the lobby until the building closed at 9 p.m. The guard said she asked if you ever talked about her. He lied, said yes, said you spoke fondly. She said, "Thank you," and left. That night in Costa Rica, I dreamed about teaching Emily to ride her bike again, but this time, when I let go, she kept pedaling away until she disappeared. The Austin American-Statesman article arrived in my inbox April 3rd. Local businessman missing after financial scandal. Brandon Carter, 38, hadn't been seen since March 19th. Wife filed missing person report. Police found no evidence of foul play. His car at airport long-term parking, ticket to Vegas, purchased but never used. The creditors returned to Emily's condo April 5th. More insistent this time, according to the police report Emily filed. They left a photo from February, Brandon at the casino, markers scattered on the table, owing $500,000. Emily requested a restraining order. The judge asked about the money owed. Order denied. Her garage sale that weekend became neighborhood entertainment. The Facebook group posts, forwarded by James's investigator, painted a portrait of decline. Moving sale, everything must go. Furniture that once hosted charity galas. Brandon's golf clubs, custom fitted, sold for $200. Wedding china, Waterford crystal, $50 for the complete set. Her wedding dress preserved in acid-free tissue, no takers at any price. A neighbor posted, "Sad. A year ago she hosted that autism charity gala here, raised $50,000. By mid-April, Emily's job applications flooded Austin's employment market. 47 positions in 2 weeks, tracked through LinkedIn. Interior design firms, employment gap too long. Retail positions, overqualified. Finally, Nordstrom hired her, the same store where she'd spent thousands monthly. Starting pay, $15 hourly, plus commission. The universe's sense of irony remained intact. April 15th, an eviction notice appeared on her condo door. 3 months behind on the mortgage, Brandon had handled finances, never mentioned the mounting debt. $4,500 monthly payment, $13,500 owed, plus late fees. May 15th deadline to pay or vacate. She discovered this returning from her first day at Nordstrom, still wearing the employee name tag she'd once ignored on others. The divorce filing on April 18th read like a corporate dissolution. Abandonment cited as cause. Brandon must be served. Location unknown. Judge allowed publication notice in 3 newspapers. Cost, $500 Emily didn't have. She used her Nordstrom employee discount to buy a suit for court, the first clothing she'd purchased with earned money in 7 years. While Emily rebuilt from ashes, I built something new in Costa Rica. My days developed a rhythm I'd forgotten existed. Sunrise with howler monkeys. Coffee overlooking the Pacific. Morning swims in water clear enough to see my feet. Lunch at Manuel's beach bar where nobody knew about dealerships or daughters. Local kids called me Roberto El Rico, Robert the Rich. I taught them English in exchange for Spanish lessons. Their parents invited me to dinners where nobody mentioned money, investments, or opportunities. Real conversations about football, fishing, and the weather. Nobody asked for anything except to pass the salt. Margaret took up painting, producing terrible seascapes that made us both laugh. We hadn't laughed together since Emily turned 16 and started seeing us as resources rather than parents. Not romantic between us, that died long ago, but peaceful, like survivors of the same shipwreck, sharing a lifeboat. My transformation surprised the doctor in San Jose. Blood pressure down 30 points. Weight dropped 20 pounds without trying, off 3 medications. What changed? He asked in accented English. Everything. Nothing. I'd stopped funding other people's lives and started living my own. April 25th, TMZ broke the story. Missing Texas businessman spotted in Mexico. Brandon Carter working at a Juarez car rental agency under an assumed name. The photo showed him behind a counter, 10 pounds thinner, wedding ring absent. Extradition unlikely for civil debts. Emily commented on the article with just 2 words. Good riddance. April 27th. Emily finally used the airport storage key. Manuel reported what she found. Every childhood item I'd saved. Photo albums she thought I'd discarded. Her grandmother's jewelry, assumed lost in the divorce. A $50,000 savings bond in her name, maturable in 1 year, and a note in my handwriting. For when you remember who you were before money mattered. Dad. The email arrived April 28th, forwarded by James. Emily's words, carefully chosen. Mr. L. Walker, please tell my father I found the storage unit. I understand now. I'm sorry. I'm working at Nordstrom. I'm surviving. Maybe that's the lesson. Don't tell him I asked, but is he happy? Emily, James asked if he should respond. April 29th, sunset on the beach. Margaret reading beside me. The same guitarist from my first night playing nearby. The same spot where Emily was discovering the box that changed everything. Tell her yes, I said to James over the phone. Tell her I'm happy. And tell her the bond was her mother's idea. Anything else? Tell her I'll be here when she's ready to visit. But she pays her own way. That night, I watched Costa Rican families on the beach. 3 generations playing together. No one staring at phones. Everyone engaged in actual conversation. Poor by American standards. Wealthy by every measure that mattered. Emily texted James, Thank you for telling me. Maybe Christmas, if I save enough. First time in 5 years she'd mentioned saving for anything. April 30th, Manuel's band played at the beach bar. They dedicated a song to Roberto El Rico. Not the Eagles this time, but a local folk song about a man who found treasure by giving everything away. Margaret translated, tears in her eyes. It wasn't really about me. It was about every expat there, all running from something, all finding something else. James called that evening to say Emily had sold her Mercedes, bought a 10-year-old Honda, started a savings account, posted on Instagram about the dignity of honest work. Should I keep monitoring her? He asked. No. The lesson was learned. The teaching was over. The learning, maybe, was just beginning. The eviction notice had been on Emily's door since April 15th. By May 5th, James told me she'd exhausted every option, pleading with property management, offering partial payments, even attempting to negotiate with the building's owner. She never knew I'd sold that property to a REIT in January, anticipating exactly this moment. Security footage from the building showed her renting the smallest U-Haul available that Saturday morning. Loading it alone took 12 hours. Mrs. Peterson, whom Emily had complained about for years, those loud grandchildren, offered help from her balcony. Emily's pride, even broken, wouldn't let her accept. She struggled with a leather couch she'd bought with my money, dragging it inch by inch to the truck while neighbors watched from their windows. The storage unit she could afford held everything except clothes and her laptop. 1 month prepaid, cheapest facility in Austin. Pure irony. Her unit sat directly next to the one I'd left for her, the one with the bond. She passed it daily, oblivious. May 10th brought Brandon's final communication, a registered letter from Juarez, requiring signature. The postal worker later provided an affidavit for Emily's divorce proceedings, describing how her hands shook as she signed. Inside, 1 page, Brandon's handwriting. Emily, by the time you read this, I'll have a new name and new life. The men looking for me won't find me. Don't try to either. I'm sorry about your father's money. But you were the one who said he'd never cut you off. We both gambled. We both lost. The prenup your dad made me sign means you get nothing from me anyway. Consider us even. B. Her Nordstrom manager called James out of concern. Emily didn't show for 3 days. When she returned, she'd dropped 10 pounds, her eyes hollow. The manager nearly fired her. For the first time in Emily Carter's life, she begged, actually begged, kept the job by promising perfect attendance going forward. May 15th, eviction day. Emily's new address, a studio apartment above a taco shop on East Riverside. Same neighborhood she'd called sketchy when visiting college friends. 400 square feet. Window AC unit rattling like dice in a cup. Shared laundry in a basement that smelled of mildew. $700 monthly, cash only, no credit check. The second job started May 16th. Denny's night shift, 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. The same Denny's where she'd made a scene 2 years prior, demanding the manager over cold eggs. Now she served drunk college students and exhausted nurses for 213 hourly plus tips. Her new schedule became robotic. Wake at 5 a.m., Nordstrom from 6 a.m. to 2 p.m., sleep from 3 p.m. to 10 p.m., Denny's from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m., repeat. Sundays off spent doing laundry and preparing meals. Rice, beans, the cheapest chicken she could find. Margaret visited May 24th. She called me that evening, her voice careful. Emily had hung one item on the studio's water-stained wall, our photo from her college graduation. The designer clothes were gone, replaced by Walmart basics. 20 pounds lost, cheekbones sharp as accusations. Their conversation, as Margaret recounted, "I helped your father plan this. I know. Are you angry? I was. Now I'm too tired to be angry. The bond was my idea. Insurance for when you hit bottom. This is bottom? No. Bottom is when you stop blaming everyone else." Emily's admission came slowly, like pulling teeth. "I was a terrible daughter." "You were a spoiled daughter. There's a difference. Is there?" "Terrible can't be fixed. Spoiled can be outgrown." Memorial Day weekend arrived with Austin's typical heat. Emily worked a double at Nordstrom, time and a half for holiday pay. Denny's afterward was slammed with drunk partiers. She made $300 in tips in one night, the most money she'd touched since March. The Denny's security camera captured her at 7:15 a.m., May 31st, sitting in her Honda counting tips. Crying. Not the manipulative tears I'd seen so often, but something raw. She later wrote to James that it was the first money she'd truly earned. No manipulation, no family name, no expectations. Just work. Her phone records showed a text, typed but never sent. "Dad, I made $300 tonight. By myself. I know you won't see this. I know you're gone. But I wanted you to know. I'm starting to understand." She deleted it, but the phone company's records remained. Meanwhile, in Costa Rica, the rainy season had started. I'd begun teaching English at the local school, volunteer work. The kids called me Teacher Roberto. Nobody knew about my money. Margaret painted terrible landscapes, selling them to tourists for $20, donating proceeds to the school. We ate dinner together most nights. Simple food, rice, fish, plantains. Better than any country club meal. James sent his last update. Emily's working 2 jobs, living in studio, surviving. My reply, stop monitoring. She needs to do this alone now. May 31st, midnight. Emily started another Denny's shift. Memorial Day crowd filtering in. She tied her apron, picked up her order pad, approached a table of drunk fraternity boys, the type Brandon would have pledged with. "Welcome to Denny's. What can I get started for you?" One recognized her, his voice loud with surprise. "Emily? Emily Carter? From the country club?" She didn't flinch. "That's me. Now what can I get you?" James told me later that was the moment, serving pancakes to people who knew her former life, that Emily stopped being my daughter and started becoming herself. June had brought Austin's full summer heat, and Emily had found her rhythm. Nordstrom customers started requesting her specifically. She'd become genuinely helpful rather than judgmental. The Denny's night shift nurses tipped extra because she remembered their coffee preferences without asking. No sugar for Beth, extra cream for Susan, decaf for Maria, who was trying to quit. Her coworker at Nordstrom told James that Emily was down to size 4 from size 10. Not from dieting, from working. Walking miles daily across retail floors, carrying loaded trays all night, eating only what she could afford. Her cheekbones could cut glass, but her eyes had gained something they'd never held before. Awareness. Sundays followed a strict routine. Laundromat at 6 a.m. when it was empty. Grocery shopping at the Asian markets on North Lamar, where produce cost half of Whole Foods prices. Meal prep in her tiny kitchen with one working burner. Then, unexpectedly, the library. She'd started reading financial literacy books, taking notes in a composition notebook like a college student. June 10th, Tuesday. Emily checked her mail in the apartment building's lobby. Usually bills, credit card offers for people with good credit she no longer had. This time, a cream envelope with no return address. Costa Rican postmark. Her hands shook as she recognized my handwriting. She sat on the lobby stairs, couldn't wait to reach her apartment. 3 pages of my careful script. the same writing that had signed birthday cards and checks for 35 years. The letter read, "Emily, I'm writing this on a beach in Costa Rica. A little girl here reminds me of you at 7, fearless, curious, demanding the world bend to her will. The difference is she's also grateful. I don't blame you for becoming who you became. I created you. Every time you cried, I wrote a check. Every time you demanded, I delivered. I thought I was loving you. I was actually crippling you. Your mother says you're working 2 jobs now. Good. Work teaches what inheritance never could. That money represents time, effort, sacrifice. Every dollar you earn carries weight my gifts never had. I'm not coming back to the man I was. That man was a checkbook with a heartbeat. But I might come back to meet who you're becoming. The storage unit key you found, that was your mother's insistence. She said you'd need something to hope for. The bond matures in April 2026. By then, you'll either have learned to live without it, or you'll still be the same person waiting for rescue. Either way, you'll have your answer about who you really are. I do love you. I always have. But love without respect is just pity. Earn my respect, Emily. More importantly, earn your own. P.S. Your grandmother would be proud of you working at Denny's. She was a waitress when she met Grandpa. You never knew that. I was too ashamed to tell you. Now I'm ashamed I was ashamed. Emily carried that letter in her apron pocket for the next week. Her co-worker at Denny's said she'd read it during breaks, crying in the bathroom. Not angry tears, but something deeper. She started asking co-workers about their families, their struggles, actually listening to the answers. She called Margaret about the grandmother revelation. Why didn't anyone tell me about Grandma? You never asked about anyone's struggle, only their success. What else don't I know? Everything that matters. The transformation showed in her Nordstrom performance review. Emily has become our top associate. Customers trust her. She relates to people saving for special purchases. She understands sacrifice now. They promoted her to department lead, $18 an hour, the first promotion she'd ever earned rather than been given. June 25th, Emily wrote back. 5 days, dozens of drafts. Margaret later shared excerpts. Dad, I'm writing this at 3 a.m. between jobs. My feet hurt. My back aches. I've never been happier. Not happy like champagne and shopping happy. Happy like I earned this sandwich happy. Happy like customers asked for me by name happy. Happy like I paid my own rent happy. I was so angry when you left. How dare you abandon me? Now I understand. You didn't abandon me. You freed me. From myself. From what we'd both let me become. Brandon is gone. Good riddance. He was my mirror, reflecting back my worst qualities. We were parasites feeding off each other's entitlement. When the host disappeared, we had nothing. I don't want your money anymore. That's not bravado. I need the bond to eventually get a better apartment. But I want it to be seed money for the life I'm building, not a rescue from the life I'm living. Come back when you're ready. Not to save me, just to see me, the real me. The one who is buried under designer labels and demands. P.S. I kept one thing from my old life. The photo of us at my graduation. You looked so proud. I want to earn that look again. The letter reached me, July 2nd, Independence Day week. Fitting timing. I read it on the beach while Margaret looked over my shoulder. She gets it, Margaret said. Getting it and living it are different things. Give her time. How much? How long did it take you to really change? I'm still changing. Exactly. June 30th, 11 p.m. Emily starting her shift. A regular customer, an elderly man who always sat alone, ordered his usual. Tonight he said something different. You look lighter, dear, somehow unburdened. Emily smiled, a real smile. I'm learning to carry my own weight instead of expecting others to carry it for me. He left a $20 tip on an $8 check. The note said, "For your education fund, a fellow traveler." I decided that night to go back in August. Not to rescue her, not to test her, just to witness who she was becoming when no one was paying her way. I landed at Austin Bergstrom at 10 a.m. on August 15th, 2025. Same gate I'd departed from in March. 5 months felt like 5 years. Margaret stayed in Costa Rica. This is your journey to finish, she'd said. The rental car was a modest sedan, not the luxury vehicle Robert Mitchell would have demanded. I drove past my dealerships, thriving without me. Good. Past Emily's old condo building where a new family occupied her former balcony, their happiness uncomplicated by debt. Checked into a Hampton Inn, not the Four Seasons. Part of my new life, comfort without excess. Called James. I'm here. She doesn't know? No. Want to see her natural life, not a performance? Nordstrom. She's there until 6. At 4 p.m., I stood in Nordstrom at Barton Creek Mall, watching from across the floor. Emily knelt beside an elderly woman, helping adjust shoe fit, patient, kind. The Emily I knew would have called another associate for that task. She'd changed physically, lean but strong, moving with purpose rather than entitlement. Her uniform was simple but neat. Hair in a ponytail, no more weekly salon visits. Her face without makeup was beautiful in a way I'd never seen. Honest. At 5:30 I approached like any customer. "Excuse me, I'm looking for comfortable walking shoes." She turned, froze, her mouth opened wordlessly, then quietly, "Dad? Hello, Emily?" Neither of us moved, 5 months of change suspended between us. Then she laughed. Not bitter or hysterical, just laughed. "You're shopping at Nordstrom? You haven't bought your own clothes in 20 years. Things change." "Yes, they do." She couldn't leave the floor, so I stayed as a customer. We talked carefully while she showed me shoes. "You look different," I said. "I am different. Poverty's an effective diet plan." "It's not poverty, it's reality. Same thing when you're used to fantasy." She rang up the shoes, applying her employee discount without asking. Pride in small gestures. "I get off at 6, then Denny's at 11. Can we have dinner between?" "I can't afford dinner out. I'll cook." "Where do you live?" She hesitated, then gave her address. "It's not what you're used to." Neither am I anymore. At 6:30 I climbed the stairs to her studio. She'd changed from her uniform into worn jeans and a t-shirt, both clean but clearly secondhand. The apartment was tiny but immaculate. 1 chair, 1 stool. She gave me the chair. "It's not much," she started. "It's yours." That makes it everything. On the wall, our graduation photo. On the counter, my letter. On a tiny bookshelf, financial planning books from the library. I cooked pasta with the groceries she had, basic but fresh. She watched me cook, something we hadn't done together since she was 10. "Mom says you're teaching in Costa Rica." "Volunteering. English to local kids. For free?" "Best things I've done lately have been free." We ate at her small table, with plastic plates and mismatched forks. Better than any country club dinner. "I hated you," she said suddenly. "I know. I mean really hated you. Wanted you dead." "I know. How could you leave me with nothing? How could I leave you with everything? It was killing you." "It was killing both of us." "Yes." Silence settled. Not uncomfortable. Necessary. At 9 p.m. she needed to prepare for Denny's. I pulled out an envelope. "This isn't rescue, it's investment." Inside, a $5,000 check and a contract. "What's this?" "Business proposal. You work for me, not at dealerships. New project, teaching financial literacy to young adults. You know the cost of not knowing." "I'm not qualified." "You're uniquely qualified. You've been both sides. Rich without understanding. Poor with awakening." She read the contract carefully. "Fair salary. No special treatment. Performance-based raises." "This isn't charity. This is business. You fail, you're fired. Daughter or not. And if I succeed, then you'll have succeeded." At 10:30 she had to leave for Denny's. She hugged me. First real hug in years. Not manipulation or performance. Connection. "I'll call you tomorrow, after I read the contract again." "Read it 3 times. That's another lesson." "I'm learning. We both are." 1 month later, Emily accepted the position but kept Denny's weekends for 6 months. Wanted a backup plan. Smart. Her first financial literacy workshop had 12 attendees. A year later, she spoke at colleges. 2 years later, she was writing curriculum for school districts. She never touched the bond when it matured, using it instead as a house down payment. The cash she used came from her own savings. Brandon never returned. Heard he married a wealthy widow in Cancun. The cycle repeating. Not our problem anymore. Thanksgiving 2025, Emily hosted in her studio. Margaret brought sides. I brought wine. We sat on the floor around her coffee table. Emily raised her water glass. She was working that night. To family. Margaret added, to lessons learned. I concluded, to starting over. We clinked glasses. plastic and glass. Perfect imperfection. The fortune I'd spent my life building was nothing compared to the wealth in that tiny room. A daughter's respect, earned not inherited, and the knowledge that sometimes the greatest gift you can give someone is the chance to save themselves. If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left. Thank you for watching.